working together is gonna be legend. Wait for it.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 37 of Zero Life. My name is Barrett Courtney. I am your host for this week, and here joined with me is a very special guest, making his second appearance ever on the internet, is Eric Courtney, a.k.a. my dad. What's up, Dad? How you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing all right. So, in case you didn't know, Zero Life is sometimes a weekly show where we talk about nerd culture and pop culture and all the things we love about it. And we post when we can, Wednesdays at 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, right here on youtube.com/ZeroLife and all of your favorite podcast services and all that good stuff. Dad, we only have one thing to talk about this week on Zero Life, and that is, what is it? What are we talking about this week?
Star Wars?
Yeah, we're gonna talk a good Star Wars, and we're gonna talk about our thoughts and feelings on Star Wars: The Last Jedi. So how we're gonna do this? We're gonna sort of do three segments. One, we're gonna talk about sort of our thoughts and feelings on like the entirety of Star Wars to give like people sort of like an idea of like where we're coming at with The Last Jedi. And then we're going to talk about our spoiler-free thoughts on Star Wars, and then we'll get into all the spoiler goodness and whatnot. So, Dad, as an old-school Star Wars fan, sort of like, where do you come down on like the original trilogy? Like, what is your favorite? Like, how do you like each one of them? In like sort of a quick summary.
All right. My favorite is Empire.
Okay.
And then A New Hope, and then Return of the Jedi. And I guess The Last Jedi is my new fourth favorite. It surpassed The Force Awakens. But I've only seen A New Jedi twice, and I fell asleep the first time for a little bit.
Yeah. You needed to take a quick nap, you know?
Yeah. But yeah, we saw it twice yesterday. So I feel like I have a pretty good idea of how I like it.
And you didn't fall asleep the second time.
No,
and you're still pretty like...
and I realized I didn't miss... I probably only fell asleep for like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
That first time.
And like the prequels, you're like...
Yeah, episode 3...
is fine.
Yeah, it's okay. And then I'm kind of gone back and forth about episodes 2 and 1 as to which one I like better or worse.
I always say I like 2 better because it's so entertainingly cringy, whereas 1 half of it is just boring and like you want to sleep through it. So that's always my argument. But like, yes, they're both just real bad. And so before The Last Jedi, you said Force Awakens was your fourth favorite Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
Then that one I really liked as well. It's definitely a retreading of A New Hope, but I think it's what Star Wars fans needed, especially after all of the junk of the prequels. Like, we just needed a sort of safe, solid Star Wars movie, and we got that. And with Rogue One, I would like, for me,
I don't even put it in to the
rankings or anything. Interesting.
Like, I mean, I liked it. It was okay, but it's like. What's the TV show that they do with like the cartoon
the Ewok,
show? Or no, like,
the Ewok TV show?
No, like the Clone Wars.
Oh,
I mean,
okay. Where it's like it's just more side
thing.
Yeah, okay.
Or like the Star Wars Christmas special with
where they introduced the very seminal character Boba Fett.
I forgot that's how he got introduced.
Yeah,
and it was like in cartoon form, was it not?
I think so. So. No, sorry. Now you have a perspective of how we feel generally about Star Wars movies. We'll start talking sort of spoiler-free thoughts, general thoughts on Star Wars: The Last Jedi. So, Dad, I'm very interested to hear generally what you thought about the movie.
Like I said, I liked it, and what I liked about it too was, like you said, the Force Awakens was kind of this safe, Star Wars movie,
cookie cutter sort of thing.
but this was different, which was cool. I like the direction they went, and it wasn't. It didn't feel like, oh, it's Empire all over again.
Yeah.
Or, whatever.
And I feel like for me, there's been a lot of seeing all my friends and everybody talking on the internet. I knew that this was going to be the most divisive Star Wars movie, and I think people are very split with the sort of different things that they did in this one. And I think for some people, like, those different main beats like landed for them and it worked, and there's other people who just couldn't sort of suspend their disbelief and believing that stuff would happen. And for me, like, a lot of the things they did differently I really enjoyed, and I think not only like fits in with the Star Wars universe, but sort of redefines what sort of a Star Wars movie can be, because this is structurally very, very different from any other Star Wars movies, and like, it worked for me. And I think it's what they do differently. I think they do on purpose for like the themes, which I don't want to get super into just since this is the spoiler-free segment. But I think they did it specifically for like what themes are happening in this movie, and it sort of all worked. There were definitely parts of the movie that I did not like. Like first time around, I was watching it and I was like, this is not great, and it sort of doesn't, like, it sort of serves like the main plot, but not really. And that was like sort of on my first viewing. The second viewing, I was more into that storyline, but the place they go, like literally go, is definitely like aesthetically akin to the prequels, and I feel like that's why a lot of people are like reactionary, like, this is bad, sorry, because it definitely was a very like CGI, and the place looks like Naboo a little bit, but like richer and fancier.
It reminded me of the episode 2 when they're chasing that bounty hunter that tried to kill Queen Amidala.
Yeah,
they chase her into that bar or whatever.
Yeah,
that scene, it was very aesthetically similar, and just that area on Coruscant.
Yeah,
it was very kind of reminded me a lot of that. So I see where you're coming from.
And so there were like parts of it like, this didn't work for me, but like on second viewing, I think definitely it was. I understood a little bit more of like why they went down this road, and like what it does for those characters and whatnot, and what it sort of does to give a new lens on the entirety of like Star Wars. I thought was pretty cool, and I really like the main plot. Again, I don't want to get super specific into spoilers, but I liked what they do with Luke, especially with like sort of what they do with his story and like how his character would realistically sort of act after that. And I think like Mark Hamill gives a really good performance, like first time being Luke in 30 years, and like Carrie Fisher was great. The new cast was great. I really, Daisy Ridley as Rey, I think was awesome, and sort of her chemistry between Adam Driver, who plays Kylo Ren, was fantastic, and sort of their whole dynamic, I think, is probably the most unique thing to happen in a main Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
And it was super cool. And I honestly don't think I can sort of talk about the movie without spoiling it. So I think we might as well get into main spoilers here. So before we get into it, Dad, do you recommend people to go see Star Wars: The Last Jedi?
Oh, of course.
Mm-hmm. Is that even a question? For me, I honestly, yes, I think it's, it's very, even if you're super, like, a person who might have already seen it and not into it and are questioning all of these things, maybe go see it again and try it out, because the Star Wars is so unique in so many different ways, and I think it's very special in that way. I think there are some problems with some things with how it was made. Like, Rian Johnson is like one of my favorite directors, and he works with great cinematographers, and a lot of his, like, he directed some episodes of Breaking Bad that are beautifully shot. He directed Looper, which is beautifully shot, and this one sort of just from a filmmaker point of view, where it's like there are a lot of like this movie wasn't as beautiful as I thought it was going to be. Like it sort of reminded me, like it was on par with The Force Awakens, sort of like camera work and like aesthetics and sort of how it all looked generally, which sort of let me down just from a sort of background side of filmmaking. And, you know, there were some side plots that I was like, yeah, whatever, like, this isn't great, but it didn't ruin the movie for me. I really think the main story it sort of is what brings this all together, and it's very cool and very unique. And so, yeah, I highly recommend you see it. And if you weren't a fan, I understand. There are definitely points that I understand, but everything else landed for me.
Well, you brought up a point that when Empire Strikes Back came out, that it was
very divisive
as well. I didn't realize that so many. I mean, I was 5.
Yeah, 5 or 6
when it was released.
Yeah.
So I mean, I loved it. I was 5. You know, I was like, "This is awesome."
And I'm sure 5-year-olds.
This is amazing.
I'm sure 5-year-olds who all saw The Last Jedi were like, "This is awesome."
Well, yeah, they also thought Episode 1 was awesome too.
I'm sorry, I was 5.
But so think about that. I mean, there are casual Star Wars fans that, you know, still think that Return of the Jedi is the best Star Wars movie. Which,
yeah,
come on.
I mean, growing up, Return of the Jedi
good.
was like my favorite one.
And for a kid, yeah, because there's a lot of action right up front
Yes.
with Return of the Jedi. They
And
go
there
and
are
save Han
Ewoks,
Solo.
yeah.
Luke does the flip and catches his lightsaber. You know, I mean,
The first 30 minutes of that movie are fantastic.
action-packed. And when you think about like the first 30 minutes of Empire, where okay, they're on this ice planet and there's a lot of dialogue, and you know, I mean, yeah,
There's a lot of
he gets
setup.
captured by the Wampa, but it's not like high action.
Yeah.
It takes a while to get into the story and the action, and for the obviously with the first one too, there's a lot of setup. But yeah, I was surprised to hear that it was kind of split with Empire, with 50% of the people loving it and 50% of the people hating it.
Yeah.
Because I mean, and especially for a sequel,
it's one of the it's not even
one of the most successful sequels.
Yeah, I think, without a doubt, the most successful sequel is when you sort of put into context, like when it came out and sort of like what sequels were like, like how much of a risk that is.
I mean, Home Alone 2 is comparable, but yeah, that's so. In other words, and I'm sure a lot of those people that didn't like Empire when it first came out
sort of grew,
realized, oh, wait a second, just because things didn't happen the way I thought they were supposed to happen doesn't mean it's a bad movie.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It didn't follow the storyline I thought it was going to follow.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And I do agree with that. Like, I think, give people time and I think they'll come around like, oh, this main plot is actually super cool. Because that being said, I do understand people's gripes with it. Like, there are some, and we'll get into spoilers stuff, but there are some threads that run a little thin. But then, like, you and I were talking about some stuff in the car where, like, we sort of put together, like, oh, no, this happened because of this and whatnot. But anyway, we recommend you go see Star Wars The Last Jedi. We really liked it. We saw it twice yesterday, and we're seeing it a third time a couple hours after we record this. So we're obviously pretty big fans. And we hope you enjoy the movie as well. So without further ado, let's get into spoiler territory. So if you haven't seen the movie, click out now and then come back after you've seen the movie and come hang out with us and sort of gather our thoughts on this movie. So I don't even know where to start, really.
Okay.
Where do you want to start?
This is just, I've been thinking about this. So when did Carrie Fisher die?
Carrie Fisher died about a year ago.
Okay,
she
so
died when I was in Cleveland, and it was
Okay.
Christmas time, and The Last Jedi, I believe, was mostly shot.
Okay, so that's my now big gripe with the movie, because I've been thinking about it now for almost a day. And okay, so Carrie Fisher died, so she can't be in the next movie.
Yeah.
So you allow her to survive. So either you're going to kill her off in between movies.
Yeah.
Or you're gonna have to kill her off with a CGI character,
No,
which is
so I honestly
unless if they've already
Garbage.
shot some scenes for the next movie with
I
her
honestly
in it.
I think she'll be in the opening crawl, and I think it'll give a justification of why Leia isn't there. I don't think they're gonna kill her off. I think they're gonna like either that or there's like a scene where they're like they're talking about her and like I don't think Leia the character dies in that universe, but I think they give a justification of why she's not in the event of Episode 9, and I think that's sort of the best.
Eventually she has to die.
Yeah,
Everybody
well,
dies.
okay. but
you're saying in Episode 9.
Yeah, I don't
she
think
won't
like
die.
yeah,
Okay.
and because I feel like definitely I'm sure that after she passed away, everybody, even like for the crew of Episode 8, were scrambling to figure out what do we do with this, because like the story was already complete, everything was shot, like they knew the story that they wanted to tell, and I think in their mindset, the reason why they stuck with it was because it was the story that they gave to Carrie Fisher, and it was the story Carrie Fisher wanted to be a part of. So I feel like they didn't want to take any of that away from like her passing, and I respect that. But it is very weird, like question of like how will
especially
they deal
with
that
it. They have the scene where she's in the
in space.
yeah, and then just like floats back, and it was funny because the first time we were watching it, we were watching it, I'm like, is she a space? Is she a
Force
like
ghost?
a force ghost? Like, what's going on right now? So that was kind of weird. And fine if she doesn't die there, then maybe she dies in the last scene. Because okay, fine, I don't know. It was a weird. That was a very weird. Like, then don't shoot where they were on the bridge, basically. Like, don't have the bridge be shot down then. If she's gonna live there, and maybe have something happen later.
Yeah.
Maybe they want they want her to reunite with Luke at the end.
Yeah,
but,
I
even though
think
that
they really
even
wanted-
though that wasn't really Luke.
Yeah,
But
it was still like a
she had
heartfelt
it-
moment
yeah.
between
they were
the two siblings.
they were they were technically together because they were interacting. He wasn't physically there, but
he was emotionally there.
yeah, and spiritually. I mean, he was actually controlling the actions of that whatever essence. But yeah, I just thought that I still kind of have a problem with that.
Yeah,
it's like.
So I want to talk about the big gripes. The only two gripes I have with the movie, and then we can go into sort of just all the stuff that was so cool about this movie. So the first thing, that scene where it blows up and she's in space for like maybe a minute, and like I mean there's like a full on shot with like Kylo like still flying around, and then he pulls back, and then they go back to the shot with Leia, and she's in space and she's frozen, and you're like, oh, this is how they're gonna like sort of let this character go, and it's sad, and then her hand moves, and you're like, wait, and she wakes up and she pulls herself back to the ship, and to me, when that scene was happening, I was like, this is a bad scene, this is a bad moment, but it could have been cool. It could like sort of her waking up in the middle of space after being in space for like a minute or two, and then her pulling herself, which like the CGI in that scene was really bad. Like she looks really
it's like
stiff.
I said I thought maybe she was a force ghost.
And then but then she gets to like the door and she like falls, and they like have her in the breather or whatever, and it was a very interesting choice. I think like because I know why they wanted to do it, because they wanted to have this moment where it's like Leia is using her force powers finally, and it's like not even finally. I think it might have been an allusion to like maybe she's been like practicing using the force for the last 30 years, you just haven't seen it, and I feel like it could have been done way cooler, where maybe if she wasn't like in the scene, she has her back turned when the bombs come in. Maybe if she was looking, I feel like the scene could have been done way cooler if she was looking out at like the bombs coming towards them, and right when they hit, she uses the force to like keep herself in the room and pull herself back into like the safe area of the ship. I think that would have been cooler, or like I think like something like that I think would have made that moment just as powerful and strong and meaningful for her character. So I think it was definitely a weird choice to like have her sort of die and then not.
Well, I think actually the main part of that scene wasn't necessarily about her. It was more about Kylo Ren
And that was so
not
cool.
being able to kill his mom.
Yeah.
Because he had the clear shot and he chose not to pull the trigger,
And then the TIE
TIE
fighters still come in.
completed the shot. Whereas, in the last movie he was able to kill Han Solo with not. I mean,
there was
but
there was
I
definitely
think
conflict.
I think that scene was more about Kylo Ren than it was about Princess Leia.
Yeah, but that's totally fair. But again, I think it was just the way it was done just still looked bad. And so like that's one of my gripes about the movie. But it's one of those things where I was like, it's bad, but like it's whatever. It to me, that moment equates to the moment in Force Awakens where R2 magically wakes up at the end of the movie and nothing really changed to make R2 wake up, and you're like, what the why did that happen? There was nothing that changed for him. So it's just sort of like that was bad, but there's so much else good about this movie. And so the other gripe I had at first in the first viewing was the side story with Finn and Rose and their trip to Canto Bright or Canto Blight.
It was Las Vegas.
Las Vegas in Star Wars. And so this was what I was talking about earlier, where the first viewing I had the gut reaction thing where I was like, oh, this planet looks like the prequels and feels like the prequels. This is bad. This is really bad. And
in the first viewing, that's when I fell asleep.
Yeah, and that's where you fell asleep, and you're only asleep for like that section, because when you woke up, when you watched it the second time, you're like, yeah, that was the only part I missed.
Really missed.
Yeah, and so for me, the first time, it was sort of like a reactionary, like, this aesthetically looks like prequel stuff, and it's all CGI, and like, and then the second time I watched it, like actually paying attention to like Finn and Rose, and I think a lot of people are upset that like Finn's character doesn't really grow a lot in this movie, but I think he is more of a sort of a guide for Rose's sort of journey in this movie, where they go to this place and they learn about the grays of the galaxy, where all these men are rich off of war and they're selling to both sides, And I thought that was like a really cool look at like sort of how the rest of the galaxy looks at this war that's been going on forever, basically. And I thought that was sort of like a really cool look at the sort of outside of the main story, and I really liked that. And I thought it was cool for those main characters to experience that, because that's something that's never really, aside from really bad ways they did it in the prequels, there was no like Star Wars movie where characters really were showed that or talked about that, and I really liked that. And like there are things that like whatever about it, where they like get on the weird horses with human faces or whatever, and they're riding around, and I was like, like this is whatever. Like I guess it's a cool moment for her character, because she's like sort of like freeing this.
Is that where she was raised? Was she raised?
I was area? I don't think so, but okay. I think she
was raised in a similar situation.
She was raised in a similar situation where she's seeing the kids get abused and like having like making them sort of like treat these, like take care of these animals, but like also like treat them like garbage and stuff. And I think she like just felt it on an emotional level. So like when she was able to free them, like it was a cool moment for her character. Again, it just wasn't done super well. But like the moment where she tells the kids like, hey, like please don't, like we're part of the rebellion, and the kids are like rallying with her, was like a cool moment. And like there are a couple good like goofs in that, like with the really drunk little guy putting the coins in BB-8 was like cute, and stuff like that. And I think like I don't think it was a great storyline, but like it was one that like people are equating it to being as bad as the prequels, and I don't see that. Like I don't think it's good by any stretch, but like, have you watched the prequels recently? They're bad, and they're really bad. Literally, a line from the prequels is, I don't like sand, it's coarse and it gets everywhere. Like, you think that storyline is as bad as that? No.
And I like the hacker guy, or whatever.
Benicio del Toro.
Yeah.
He was a cool character, because he also sort of summed up.
He's kind of like that character he's neither good nor bad.
Yeah.
He's just...
And he sums up that that storyline in a character where it's like all about the grays of the universe and sort of flipping sides and all this stuff, sort of just doing whatever benefits him, you know. And I think
not that I think that's like the way you should go, but I like that type of character.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
Like, I'm not good or bad. I'm out for me.
It's always an interesting character to put in a movie that are very like
Jake the Snake in wrestling, or almost like Boba Fett is that kind of character in a way.
Sort of.
He's viewed as like evil, but he's not really. He's just trying to make a living.
Money, but then his dad helps make the clone army, man. Like they're totally evil. But like there are.
But once again, no, he didn't help. He didn't. He just signed a contract. You know what I mean? He just made money. He wasn't like in charge of the clone army or anything.
And so, like watching that storyline, I was like, the better way to have done this was to like totally cut out that planet. What should have happened was like Benicio del Toro's character should have been like like he was like a prisoner of the resistance, and like they're talking about like how they need to do this. And he eventually, like, they are, for some reason, like, passing the jail cells, and he's like, hey, I heard you need to get on this ship. Like, I can totally do it, you know? And then, like, him being a prisoner on that ship, that's how he would find out about, like, the escape pods leaving. So, like, when he, like, turns sides and helps out the resistance, he could be like, hey, like...
And he really didn't. He didn't flip until they got caught. Because at first, in the first viewing, because I kind of fell asleep in that part,
you thought he was...
I thought he was, like, on their side the whole time.
Yeah, okay.
But I realized, no, it was just because they got caught. Yeah. He was like, well, I could either...
Get caught or make a lot of money.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I really like this character. I think like they could have introduced him in a better way and make it more streamlined. Because I think if you made his character just be on their ship as a prisoner, you could have cut down 20 minutes of this movie that didn't need to happen. And I feel like people like my grandpa, your dad, who saw it with us for the first time yesterday, he was like, it was too long, and like I didn't care about any of these characters. I feel like if you cut it down, like if you'd taken out that storyline and put his character on the ship, I feel like this movie would probably be regarded as way better overall from people. You know, I feel like this is the storyline. When I watched it, I was definitely like, this is the thing people are really upset about. But like there are still things that happened in it that I thought were really cool. And so those were my only like two big gripes about it. So let's talk about like everything else that happens, like the main story stuff. I love that when Rey, like it sort of takes away the moment from Force Awakens where like Rey gets on the island, she gives like she holds out the lightsaber.
I love that part where he just like tosses it aside.
But like
whatever.
But like at the end of Force Awakens, it's like this sign of hope and whatnot. And so I can also understand why people were like, that moment is totally thrown away now because he picks it up and he like throws it. But regarding to what happened with him and Kylo and that generation of Jedi, I honestly think like after all of that, he would have reverted back to being that farm boy that like sort of just like, I don't need to like be a part of anything big. I just like want to help myself, and you know, just like I honestly like all of his chores that you see him do on that planet. I honestly think are like young Luke would have thought were super cool. Of like I have to like fend for myself and like survival and stuff. Like I don't know. Like he really reverted back to like not.
I think it was almost like a penance.
Yeah.
You know, like that was like his punishment to himself, just being completely isolated and doing kind of menial tasks throughout his day, and and like he said, he went there to die, and he should be the last Jedi.
Yeah, and I really I thought that was all really cool, and I think for that character, it made total sense because I think what people were expecting, like Luke was going to be like this wise, he was going to sort of be like Yoda and all this stuff, and I one of the many examples of why this movie is so different is that they go against that curve. He is not like this Jedi master anymore. Like Luke was only sort of like a Jedi Knight for a movie, like half a movie really, and like the rest of it, he's still like this young kid who doesn't really have the Force figured out. So I sort of like that, like he doesn't feel like he is allowed to teach this anymore, and he is sort of making like snarky remarks that totally like young Luke would make, and giving Rey crap all the time and stuff. Like I totally was down for that, and sort of seeing like Rey's frustration was really cool, because like, you know, I feel like she's almost part of the audience at that point, where she's like, this isn't what I expected you to be, this is bullcrap, you know. And that frustration, I think, led her to sort of the weird friendship with Kylo Ren for a little bit, you know. And yeah, I feel like if Luke had agreed to like train her right away, and even if he wasn't going to go back with them, if he had just agreed to train her, that wouldn't have made that relationship with Kylo possible. She would have been like, no. And then like when they killed Han, and so like the sequence, like I totally agree with that, where like the sequence of events, if like Luke wasn't like that, their friendship wouldn't have happened. So like when they fight at the end, it wouldn't have, I felt like, really given an emotional depth that the movie actually gave, you know.
Well, she wouldn't have gone to Kylo,
like she would have listened to him and whatnot, because I feel like Rey now compared to young Luke, I feel like she's a little more mature and is ready to give like listen to orders and instruction. So like if she was on Dagobah with Yoda, she would have stayed to complete her training. I don't think she would have left, you know. And so,
well, part of it has to do with their upbringing as well, where she pretty much raised herself and had to learn to survive on her own. You know, Luke was raised by his aunt and uncle, but he also had kind of, I mean, a semi-normal childhood where he had friends, and you know,
sort of like connection with friends,
and they were all going off to school, you know,
or the rebellion and stuff like that.
So you know, he was a little bit of a whiny, immature guy, where she was, you know, she was an adult at the age of 12 or 13, you know, and in the first movie, she's like 16 to 18, something like that.
I would argue she might be a little closer to Luke's age in A New Hope. So like Luke is like 18 to 19, 20, and I really liked that whole thread where it's like her frustration with him led to this like weird like friendship with Kylo, and so like you get emotionally invested because I feel like everybody for this movie was theorizing like, like Rey might turn, or Kylo's going to turn, you know? Yeah. And so, like, this movie totally fed into that, and you are on board, and you're invested, and that makes their splitting at the end, like, they're falling out so much more weighted, you know? I loved that, and, like, when we were like, all right, Kylo, like, you're a good guy now, right? But no, realistically...
But then you also think that you brought this up, if Kylo flips, who's the bad guy now?
Yeah, exactly.
But if Rey flips, there's still plenty of good people.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? I mean, yeah, there's that redheaded dude, bad guy.
Hux.
Yeah, whatever. But,
sort of like the
there would be no Sith type character anymore.
Yeah.
Whereas, even at the end of the movie, where that kid, when he grabs the broom, he's
like using the force, which was so cool. And like this movie was definitely about like you don't need to be someone's like you don't need to be connected to anybody. And like this is a good time to talk about Rey.
You don't have to have a bloodline to be a Jedi, which was never really, you know, back in the Old Republic,
a thing.
Random kids were force sensitive.
Yeah, exactly. And so like, you know, this movie went against sort of like all of our theories, because another question was like, who is Rey related to? And like, she's obviously a Skywalker, or no, she might be a Kenobi, or like she's the Emperor's granddaughter or something. It's like, no, gross. Or like the worst theory of them all was that she was reincarnation of Anakin Skywalker, which was like when people were like, yeah, that could be totally a cool story, and I was like, you're an idiot. Like that's bad. They would never do that in Star Wars, but like I love that. And who knows if it's true or not? Because he like,
well, no, because in the second watching, she's the first one to say that her parents were nobody. He's like, do you know who they are? And she's like, they're nobody. And he's like, yeah, you knew all along. So yeah.
And I really like that, because it's like, you know, it gives the sense of like, hey, just because you're not like a part of like a bloodline or anything, or you haven't been a part of this family story for 7 movies, doesn't mean that you're not important, you know. And that like last shot with the kid definitely sort of brings back that theme where it's like, you know, anybody can be like a hero in this universe, you know. And I really liked that theme because it was very different from the rest of the Star Wars movies, where it's very much about like the Skywalkers and like they're always the hero or the hero turned villain and stuff like that. And it's like it was always, people always complained about these movies being way too convenient. Like it's too convenient that it's always about this one family, you know. And I think it's funny that people are complaining that this movie goes against that. Like, this is the first movie that goes against that, and they're still like, man. It's like, well, you guys complained about this for years. So I really liked that. And oh man, like they're like the relationship with Kylo I loved, because like the elevator scene, right, where they're going up and they're both convinced that the other one is gonna flip.
Yeah.
And you sort of sense like something weird was going on, because she's like, I saw your future, like you flipped. He's like, well, I saw your future.
Well,
you flipped.
basically, she said she saw his future, and it didn't involve Snoke, which turned out to be true.
Yeah. And so let's talk about that. Is like, how do you feel about sort of like Snoke was sort of introduced as like the big bad of the trilogy in in Force Awakens, and now he's dead. So how do you feel about that? Like, it was sort of them killing the big bad in the second movie, not the third.
I thought it was cool. It like you said, it was cool to see a Sith turn on another Sith.
Because you never see that in a Star Wars movie.
Well, Vader and the Emperor.
Yeah, but like a Sith turn on a Sith
while he's still a Sith.
You know, like Vader turns
like,
back to the
now
light side.
I'm in charge.
Because you hear the story of Plagueis and the prequels, where like his student turns on him and is still a Sith and stuff. Like the whole stories of like there's always two, there's always a master and an apprentice, and that's it, sort of thing. Like, was always cool to learn, like sort of hear about. They never go to it,
and often it was the apprentice
taking over,
turning on the master with the Sith, because
except for
anyone who has power always wants more power, and if you're second in charge, you always want to be first.
Exactly.
You know?
So like except for Sidious, where he like went through like 3 Padawans and like 3 movies and stuff. It was dumb. How did you feel about sort of them paying homage to the prequels, where Luke says Darth Sidious, because he's never called Darth Sidious in the original movies. He's just the Emperor in the original movies.
I didn't notice that.
I forget when. It's one of the lessons Luke is saying with like giving Rey, and it's like, he's talking about the failures of the Jedi and stuff, and he was like, and they were a entire like army of Jedi were fooled by Darth Sidious and stuff.
Okay.
And I was like, that was an interesting choice. And it's one of those things where it's like the prequels are sort of just canon now, so even though they're bad, we still have to sort of accept that sort of lore in a way, you know.
I know. The midichlorians, I love that they don't bring them up anymore, but why did you do that? Like, it's just you know, and that's what was cool about this movie too, is because they brought back how the Force is this
feeling,
this sort of field
and energy
that is between everything, not just living things, but the
like,
rock, the ship, you know, between everything.
That scene is so cool, like, and it's so funny where it starts out and she like reaches out, he's like tickling her, and then he like slaps
her. Like,
her.
don't reach out with your hand, reach out with your feelings.
And like the way that scene was edited was also something very different from like how it's like all cut, and like we're just going from like the plants growing to like seeing the porgs and all this stuff. Like, that scene is cut just so cool, and it like gives sort of like a better understanding of how, like, when they're reaching out like through the Force, like sort of what they're seeing in their mind's eye, and I thought that was awesome. Also, side note, porgs are bad. They're so dumb.
I started laughing. No. I understand, like, the
we need to make toys,
comic relief, and we need to make toys for little kids. We want little kids.
And Brandon Hunt, who works at IGN.
That's what I had a big problem with though. Okay, it was funny when
Chewbacca's eating it.
When they kind of first showed up, that they they tried to grab the lightsaber. And it looked like the one was trying to turn it on, and if he had, it would have killed the other one. That would have been hilarious.
Yeah.
But they're not going to do that. But then when Chewie's eating the chicken, or
he's eating a pork.
Yeah, exactly. And they're all kind of looking at him sad-eyed. Okay, that was kind of funny. But when they're in the chase, where
the last planet.
Yeah, they draw the TIE fighters away from
all the ground ships. And shit.
And they're flying kind of through that like crack in the planet, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And they keep going back to the porgs. It's like, this is an intense scene, and it's, it has you on, and then they're trying to do jokes with the porgs, and it's like,
it
didn't cut work. It out. Like, stop it. Okay, they're real cute, you know, but it was just
one of those things, I feel like,
you don't do comic relief in an intense scene like that.
Yeah.
You know, it's like
it breaks.
Maybe after
you either do it at the very beginning, like Luke training Rey, where he's tickling her hand, and then it gets cool, or you do it at the end, right? Where like
you don't do it in the middle of like an intense
where
scene
Rey
like
grabs the lightsaber, and then Snoke brings it around and hits her on the head, and like brings it back to him. You know, like a lot. I really liked a lot of the humor, but it was. The only humor I didn't like was all of the porg-based humor, because I thought it was all timed badly. And
it's forced.
Yeah, it was forced.
But it's marketing.
It's that good old, like, sort of Lucas model of just like, we need to make stuff to make the toys.
Yeah.
And whatnot.
And the crystal creatures, those little like wolves or foxes or whatever.
I forget what they're called.
And
they look like
bad, and
Vulpixes.
they weren't overdone.
Yeah.
But that's another...
And they sort of serve like, where did they all go?
Yeah,
like, we got to get out of here.
They definitely served a purpose.
Yeah. And so like that was cool. That was fine. And then so sort of going back of like the training with Luke, and like that scene was really cool, and like I really liked the whole like hearing the story from Luke, the very generalized story about like the falling out with Kylo. And then hearing Kylo's perspective of it, and then like Luke sort of telling the full story of like,
there was a moment where he was going to kill him, and then he kind of rethought about it, but he still had his lightsaber out, and that's when Ren wakes up, and it
was like all bad timing and bad communication and between them, and I thought that was really cool, and I'm trying to figure out where to go next, because there's still a lot to unpack.
What I don't quite understand, maybe, is where does Kylo get this rage from, and this tendency towards the dark side from?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it had to do with Han Solo, and maybe his relationship with his parents and their relationship, because obviously Han and Leia don't stay together.
Yeah, exactly.
So maybe that.
But do they not stay together because of Kylo? That's never really like talked about, you know.
People don't split up because of their children, or not because of it. Some people stay together because of their children, but people split up because they're not compatible.
Yeah,
something goes wrong. But the kid often can see themselves as the problem.
Yes. And so I think there's some things that you could obviously go into, but they haven't gone
he had
enough
such
into it.
Rage. It seemed like when he was like,
when he wakes up and he brings all
when he was listening into like his dream state, and there's just like all this,
shouting
in his head, because it seemed like
I want to know more about that, and I hope they go into it in episode 9. I feel like that's something they could like finally sort of like complete his arc and sort of show like his perspective on the world, to finally give us context of like why he's like this. And so with that, like going back away from the main storyline with all the Jedi and stuff, like I liked Poe's storyline of like everything that happened like on the ship while they're like slowly running away from the Resistance, and sort of like his thing that he has to learn, where it's just like you can't be the hero all the time, which is also a theme that sort of connects with the main story, where it's like it's not always about being part of the main bloodline or anything.
Well, it's not about getting in getting in an X-wing fighter and blowing stuff up. Sometimes you have to make rational decisions.
Yes, and you strategize and whatnot.
You can't win every single battle. Sometimes you have to retreat and worry about the big picture.
Yeah, and you got to
this
say, like,
tiny
you have to
battle.
protect what you have and
Yeah.
stuff. Like, after that first battle, like,
They lost
you see, like,
all their bombers.
Yeah, and so it was, and that first battle is super cool, and like you're really rooting for that girl when she's kicking like for the remote to come down. Like, you feel that tension. That was so cool, and like and you feel the frustration with Leia when she looks and like most of her ships are gone, not just bombers but just ships in general.
Yeah,
and you really feel that, and I like that we got to see, like, I think this is the smallest we have ever seen the rebellion or the resistance or like anything.
Oh, yeah,
you know? Like, at the
definitely.
end it's like 20, 30 people, you know, and it's crazy. And like, I think at the end of this movie, I was talking to my friend Jack last night, and we were talking about this, and his problem was that like there's not a lot of questions at the end of this movie. Like, it's sort of like, okay, they got to rebuild, and her and Kylo are gonna fight, and that's really like, I don't have any questions. But I sort of like that. I like that, like, yeah, I want to see, like, how do they rebuild this thing that's only 30 people now? How do they fight the First Order? And the fact that I don't have a lot of questions makes Episode 9 like weirdly way more exciting, because now I have no expectations. I have like it could be about anything. Whereas for this movie, and I feel like why this movie was disappointing and weird for a lot of people, is because there were so many questions and building up all of this stuff, you know. I think that's honestly a fault of Force Awakens. Like, at the end of A New Hope, you aren't left with questions. They won, you know, and it was like, I'm sure when that movie first came out, they're like, oh man, that was like great story, and you know, like, I just have to accept I'll never see anything again. And then they announced a new one, and they're like, there's more to tell? Like, what? And then they did.
Well, Vader was still
got
alive.
away. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. But that was like the one thread. Whereas the end of Force Awakens, like, who's Rey related to? Why did Kylo and Luke fall out? Who were like
Snoke?
Who was Snoke?
We never found out.
Who were the Knights of Ren? And I honestly,
I think Snoke was Snoke.
I think he was a Snoke. I understand people's frustration about that, because this dude is ancient, so he was obviously around during the time of like the original trilogy and maybe even the prequels. So like, where was he when all of this was happening? And I get people's frustration with that. But honestly, like, he's the equivalent, if you don't even look at the prequels, right? If you just look at the original trilogy, like, you don't really know who the Emperor is. He's just a bad dude, you know?
And you see him, and he talks to Vader and Empire through the like Skype.
I mean, it is blue. Yeah, that makes sense.
But yeah, you don't know where he comes from, or even his relationship to Vader. Really,
Yeah.
you don't. I mean,
Yeah.
you know that he's the main Sith and Vader's his apprentice, but
you don't know how they got there.
Yeah,
exactly.
how Vader was manipulated and stuff like
And
that. And that's the same thing with Snoke. You don't know where he comes from,
And so,
who cares?
again, that was another one of those moments where it like went away from the sort of curve of what Star Wars is, and I loved it. You know, like, to give like an emotionally resonant story, I don't think you can really make this sort of like ominous main Sith character like the big bad. I think this story needs to be about Rey and Kylo, and like the fact you get like the third party dude out of there, I think makes it sort of more focused, you know. Like the fact that Kylo is the one who goes against him, because I think it's obvious that Kylo really doesn't care about Snoke, you know. He's just seduced by the dark side, and so, like, that moment is so satisfying when like you think like that entire scene is very reminiscent of Return of the Jedi, where like Vader brings Luke up and stuff.
Oh, totally.
And you think they're gonna have that moment where like
they're gonna battle each other.
Yeah, and they're like, Rey and Kylo are gonna fight, and then Kylo turns on Snoke, and then they're gonna go like, Kylo's gonna turn, but then for a second you're like, wait, then who would be the bad guy? And then and they fight together, and they fight the Imperial Guard, and it's one of the best shot action sequences of Star Wars ever. Like,
I thought it was totally cool battle. Yeah, because it was the Imperial Guard, like you said, like in the
original trilogy, they're just like,
they just stand there and they get dismissed. Like, I no longer need your services.
It's like
like leave us be.
And like, why does he even need like bodyguards? He like can shoot electricity out of his hands and shit.
Not only that, but it's like his ability to move people the way, like just how he tossed her around the room.
Yeah. Like there was no way that they were gonna have like this big battle against him because he was too powerful, you know.
Yeah.
And so like,
and that's what was cool too about the way he was killed, is that he's like, I know Kylo's mind. I can see his thoughts. Like
he knows who his true enemy is.
Yeah. Well, he said now he knows he needs to kill his true enemy.
Yeah.
And it turns out he was his true enemy.
Yes.
He's the one that's stopping him from climbing to power.
Yes. Oh man, so cool. And like,
that was cool.
Yeah, and like he is ripped in half, and is very like a Darth Maul moment, where he's just like, he like topples over, like when they go back to that scene later on where Hux is in the room and his body like sort of fall, or like his legs fall over. It's so funny.
I love that. What's his name? Hux.
Yeah, where he brings out the.
No, I just. Oh yeah, he's gonna shoot
him, and then he wakes up and he pulls it back. Yeah. I laughed both times, and no one else did. I was like, that moment is hilarious.
And I also like how Hux thinks that like now he's gonna be in charge, and it's like, dude.
No.
I mean, Kylo is, not...
In that last segment, like, he, like, tosses him away like nothing,
yeah,
you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, and Kylo's not refined as a Sith. And that's what's going to be interesting, too, is
how is he going to be as a leader?
Well, exactly, and he's obviously not good. Yeah. I mean, that scene where, Luke shows up, at the end, and he's like, fire every gun on this guy. And, he just... He gets overwhelmed with emotion. Yeah, and he's like, keep firing. Yeah. And the guy's like, okay, calm down. I think you got him. But then it turns out he doesn't get him, and then he's got to go down there and like battle him on his own. Whereas if they had just rushed the base, they could have killed the whole resistance. You know what I mean? But his
he doesn't
decision
forward
process.
Thinking.
Yeah, his decision process is flawed, and that's what. The lesson that Poe learned during that movie was that you got to make
like take your emotional like thing out of it. You got to like take yourself out of it, and you got to look at the bigger picture. And and that's why I really liked Poe's sort of arc and what he has to learn, and sort of like at the end, like Finn sort of learns it too, but I don't think it like landed as well with like that whole like where Rose like saves him.
I love that line though, that we're not going to win by killing our enemies. We're going to win by saving the people we love. Yeah, that was
a really good line. And then they kiss, and it doesn't.
Well, she's obviously attracted to him.
Yes,
and
even from the beginning,
where she's all nervous.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she sees him as like an idol and like this person to look up to. And then they have like this. Connection, they have this
like
scene
this whole
together,
like art
blah, blah.
together and stuff. Yeah,
But it's hilarious when he finally sees Rey again, and they like hug and stuff. I think I turned to you and I was like, I saw you kiss that girl, or I know you kissed her.
I felt it in the Force. And like. I feel like at the end, like Finn finally becomes a hero, because even in Force Awakens, he wasn't really a hero. Like in Force Awakens, he abandons the First Order, and then he like pretends to be part of the Resistance, but only to like impress a girl, and then like runs away.
But also not just to impress her, but also to get away.
Yeah,
I mean he doesn't want to be seen. He doesn't want to be seen as a stormtrooper.
And the only reason he comes back is because he sees Rey get kidnapped. And that's like, he doesn't really have enough, like, he's not like full resistance. Yeah.
No, he's just like get away from the First Order.
Yeah.
I always want to say the Empire.
Yeah. And like get away from the bad guys, and also like protect like his own, you know? And so like when, like, I feel like people in this movie were expecting him to be all like gung ho, like we need to like, I'm fighting the bad guys. It's like, well, no, he never really was like that, and like he wasn't like that until the end of this movie, right? And I thought like
when he says, what's the female stormtrooper in silver?
Oh, Phasma.
Yeah, Phasma. When she says, "You've always been scum,"
and then he goes, "Rebel scum," and that was a cool moment for him, and that's why like. I think like that sort of worked for me, like the whole like going to that other planet and whatever worked for me a little better, because it does serve his character a little bit. Not a lot, but there's like cool growth there that like you don't really think about until you look back at Force Awakens and you realize like, oh, his character didn't really grow at all in that movie, and it does sort of come out of this childish, like, running away sort of thing, and it's finally fighting up against his demons. Like, the fight against Phasma, even though it was, like, they never really explain, like, how she got there. We know from seeing episode 4 that it's very easy to get out of a trash compactor. Like,
they never showed her being
going
put into
the,
anything.
Yeah.
Like,
they might have just made the
they
joke.
referenced it. Because he was like, oh, you got any trash compactors around here?
Like, they could have just made that joke. Like, who knows? Who cares? You know? And, like, so, like, the assumption at the end of 7 was that she was dead, or maybe she wasn't. And then, like, when she comes back in 8, only for a couple minutes, like, I think people were very disappointed. Like, oh, she, like, comes back and, like, she's not even cool and stuff. Like, I don't think she was ever there to really be a character, like, on her own. I think she was there to be a symbol of, like, Finn's still weird attachment with the First Order. Like, it was sort of like a foil, you know? She was a foil to him in the sense of, like, how he is totally not dedicated to, like, really anything, and how she is full on dedicated to the First Order and stuff. And, like, him finally facing her was, like, a turning point for his character to be like, no, I'm finally standing up and not running away anymore, and, like, doing this. And I thought that was really cool. Like, I that whole fight scene was really a growing point for that character, and I loved it. And real quick, let's just talk about how they got to that fight scene where that whole ship comes apart. Because Laura Dern's character, I think, is the unsung hero of this movie, where she is sort of being very, like, strategic, like, she's trying to strategize and trying to take any opportunity she can get, where Poe is, like, very emotional and, like, we need a plan now and stuff. She's like, get this asshole off my bridge and stuff. And
and at first, during the first viewing, I thought she was like a plant. Yeah.
And it's like the fact that, like, and they sort of set it up where it's like she is sort of suspicious and stuff. And, like, of course you would be on Poe's side because Poe's one of the main characters. But at the end, it's like, no, Poe has to learn, like, you got to be smart about situations, and you got to take what you can get, and you got to, like, get, like, sort of take what you're given.
Pick your battles.
Yeah,
basically.
pick your battles. And like, her at the end, where she realizes that, like, because Benicio del Toro's character, like, I think the thing we didn't get the first time was how he found out that they were escaping on escape pods, but then we remembered that Poe is talking to Finn and Rose, and Benicio del Toro's in that same room, and he's like, they're getting on escape pods and stuff, so, like, when they get captured, Benicio del Toro's like, hey, they're escaping on escape pods. So if you want to get them. And so when she sees that, she realizes, like, I need to not just go down with the ship. I need to, like, have it go down for a purpose, to save them. And, like, that, like, using light speed to go through another ship is the coolest thing to ever happen in a Star Wars movie. Because, like, that was never even a thing that had ever popped. Like, that was never even a question in my mind of, like, what would happen if someone did that. That was just like, nah, just people don't do that, you know? And so, like, when she does it, and we didn't realize...
You realize it's going to happen before it happens, too. You're like, when she starts doing it, you're like, oh my gosh, she's going to go into light speed and take out that ship. And it was the coolest scene, and the first time we watched it, I thought it was for effect. That there was, like, no sound. And, like, and there was someone in the theater even said, did someone turn the speakers off?
Yeah.
But then in the second one, I turned to you and I was like, oh my gosh, that's how it would really sound, because she's traveling at light speed.
And
so
light travels
faster than sound. So that's what it would actually, like, look like.
It's like a lightning bolt, like, where you see it and you don't hear it
till later.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that was such a cool scene.
Oh my god. And then, like, and you sort of realize, like, when Hux realizes and stuff, you're like, oh, it's about to go down. And it's, like, one of the coolest moments in Star Wars. And, yeah, it was just, so awesome. And so shout out to Laura Dern, who, like, not only did that and, like, sacrificed herself and made one of the coolest moments of Star Wars, but also, like, her character and sort of, like, knowing how to lead people and sort of, like, taking a back step of, like, sort of puppeteering and sort of just, like, trying to find hope any way that she could. And, you know, like, the one thread, like, people were questioning was, like, did she know the entire time that they were going to go to that one planet crate or whatever, like, at the very end?
They must have known it was
there
nearby. Yeah.
And I think people were upset where it was like, why didn't she just tell Poe in the first place about that? Because then they wouldn't have needed to send Finn and Rose on that whole journey. And I think a couple of things. One, she knew that he was like a hot-headed dude, so she doesn't need to tell him anything. You know?
Well,
He's
yeah,
only
I
a
think
captain.
that's part of it too. Because when their first interaction,
she's annoyed by him.
Well, she's like, yeah, Princess Leia's last move was to demote you. And, you're a low level.
Mm-hmm. And I honestly don't think and they don't go into it like if she knew the entire time or not. I honestly don't think she knew until probably those last couple hours, because when they do the first jump and they land, they're like in the middle of nowhere in space.
Yeah.
So they don't really like have a destination. Their plan was just to go somewhere, think about where they needed to go next, and then jump there.
Yeah.
And so I feel like she was just steadying the course, hoping something would come around. And then when she finally noticed that, that's when she started feeling all of the escape pods. And then Poe was like, "This is bullcrap," and then she's like, "You're a dumb kid. I don't need to listen to you." And then that's when he does the whole mutiny thing. Also, shout out to all the C-3PO goofs, which were all great. Where C-3PO every time is trying to do one of his C-3PO tropes, where he's like, the probability, and he's like, shut up.
But he finishes anyway.
Yeah.
To 1.
And then when at the beginning where Leia's like, wipe that like surprised look off your face.
It was frightened look. Or
it was
anxious look or something like that.
He's like, oh, I'll try, and like all of his like tropey things, like they all like went against, and they're like making jokes about it, like how dumb they are.
It's against my programming to
be a part of a mutiny. And then the door starts he's like, no.
I love when. Is it when Leia comes in and stuns Poe?
Yeah.
I think he's standing in the background with like his hands up, like he's in trouble.
And then Carrie Fisher's daughter like puts up her hands too.
Oh yeah, I didn't realize. Oh, that's her daughter in real life.
Yes.
Okay, I was like, wait a second.
There's another Skywalker. No, yeah, that's her daughter in real life. Or at least I think it was. I remember her from Force Awakens, and I feel like a couple people pointed out to me like, oh yeah, like that's Carrie Fisher's daughter. I could be wrong though. I need to do some more fact checking on that. But then I think the only couple of things we really need to talk about, like is sort of nearing the end of the movie, unless you can think of anything else, is sort of that last sort of like the fight scene with Kylo and Rey was really cool, like where they're fighting all the Imperial guards, and like she is caught with one of them, and
she drops her lightsaber and catches it, slices in half.
And then like the funniest and this is where you do comedy sort of right, is at the very end of like a very intense sequence where like she throws the lightsaber and he just turns it on real quick and it like goes through his head.
It works almost like a blaster.
Yeah, exactly. It's cool. So good. And like that whole scene was cool. And then like Kylo waking up and they're like, hey, we need, like they're going to that planet, we need to go after them. That whole last sequence. And like in the trailers they show like the scene of like those new walkers and stuff, and like so seeing that in the trailer and seeing like Leia sort of in the shot with like the big door closing and stuff, I was scared this movie was going to be a lot like Empire. And I was like, this is going to be the opening scene and it's going to be like the Hoth battle, because it looks like the Hoth battle.
Okay, yeah.
But it was the last scene, and it was like completely different from what the Hoth battle was, you know, and I really liked that. And sort of them only being like 30, 40 people, and you know they're trying to use everything they can, and like they're reaching out to like allies of like the resistance and stuff, and no one comes back to them. And that was also sort of like a cool moment, because I feel like those moments are very much like a Deus Ex Machina, where it's like a savior at the, or I don't know if that's, no, I don't think that's what it's called, but like it's a trope in like old like Roman plays where like a deity would come down when everything's in trouble, like a deity that's never been introduced in the story before, and saves everybody, and it's all okay. And the fact that they don't do that, right, where they don't like, you know, some random person doesn't come and save them, you know, like I really liked that they had to figure it out for themselves. And like Rey comes in and moves all the rocks and stuff. It was like, and that was like her sort of first time like purposefully using the Force and like being able to like sort of using it and knowing what it's about and whatnot, even though she makes the jokes like lifting rocks, which was funny. Let's actually go back.
Wait a second.
Okay.
I was just thinking, okay, I didn't realize till the second viewing that Rey has the Book of the Wills.
Yes,
and it's
in the
it's
Millennium
on the
Falcon.
Millennium Falcon. Yeah, because they have the scene where Yoda calls
Burns
down the lightning, and
but
burns
Luke
the
never
tree.
goes in, so he never sees that they're not there.
She took him
Yes.
before she left, which
Yes.
is whatever.
So maybe
Sneaky.
Yes.
but wait, I also have to say that I liked seeing Yoda, and I liked like the things that he was talking about. It was really cool.
And it wrapped up it sort of gave perspective. And that's the scene where I realized he's still just this young farm boy, where Yoda's you're still not paying attention.
Think
to,
about Luke is
where you are.
Luke is
what you are doing.
Luke is 60.
Yeah.
Yoda's 900. He's had a lot more time to
reflect on things.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And he was why'd you? He's I told you to pass on what you had learned.
Yeah.
Why'd you not listen to my advice? But he sounds like Grover. That's what initially the first time we watched it, I'm like, why is Kermit the Frog in this movie? And then the second time I'm like, no, it's not Kermit, it's Grover.
And it's also weird because
it's probably
Jim Henson's kid.
Jim Henson's kid as opposed to Frank Oz doing the voice. And that's the thing, Henson's kid learned how to do all the Muppet voices, but I don't think he really practiced Yoda.
And the weird thing was for this movie where they decided to double down on CGI in the place where the other planet and stuff, and I was like, okay, that's cool. You need to sell what you need to sell, right? You need to make things look realistic enough in either practical effects or CGI, whatever you need to do.
But yeah,
then
Yoda
they made Yoda
he was a cross between a puppet and a CGI character.
And it looked really weird.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I'll have to ask around to maybe people who might know better. That might have been just full CGI, but they were trying to make him look like Yoda from the original trilogy.
Yeah, I think that was the
and less like Yoda from the prequel trilogy. And I appreciate it, but it was still weird, not Uncanny Valley, but Uncanny Valley where it's it sort of looks right, but not really. It really doesn't look right. But I thought it was awesome that Yoda came back and that scene.
I liked the scene.
Was really cool. But then he looks sort of dumb, and he sounds like Grover. But okay, so that was the one other thing I forgot about. But going back to the ending of the movie, of sort of they're all pinned down, and Luke comes out of nowhere and is sort of treated as the deity coming down to save everybody, but there's actually meaning to why he's there. And he talks to Leia, and it's this really good moment. It's their first time being on screen together since Return of the Jedi, and they have this moment as siblings. And then he gives her these gold dice from the Millennium Falcon.
Yeah, it's the what is that? The thing you hang in your car.
Yeah, whatever.
Decoration.
Yeah, and
but those were that was part of Luke's imagined state.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Those weren't the
because
real
they disappeared.
dice. Yeah.
When Kylo comes and picks them up, and then they disappear, and he sort of I don't know what that did for him, because I don't know what the relevance of the golden dice are, to be honest.
Well, they were hanging in the Millennium Falcon.
So they're
Han's
yeah,
whatever. But who knows? Maybe they were a gift,
or it might be something explained in the comics. Who the fuck knows? I'll have to look up. I know people out there probably know who read all the comics and watch all the TV shows and stuff. But that last fight between Luke and Kylo again is something so different. This whole movie was about...
Well, that's the thing too, and I didn't notice it until the second time, is Luke is not making contact with him at all intentionally.
Yes.
Intentionally. Because normally, in a lightsaber fight, you'd block, but he's just avoiding moves.
Yes.
When he does the what would you call that,
limbo. And the first viewing, you think oh, he's just really good at
I thought he was messing with him.
Yeah. When he was doing when he did the shoulder thing, it was
so
funny.
That was funny. But no, I thought at first he was just messing with him. I don't need to use my lightsaber against you. That's how like more skilled I am, and also controlling my emotions, whereas you're obviously angry and
Yeah.
blah blah blah. But then I realized, oh, he can't if he lets him touch it,
He
it
knows.
gives away
Yeah.
like what's going on. Yeah.
And like you sort of, and like there are hints the first time around too, because like he brings out the lightsaber and it's blue, and I was like, wait, they just, and you see the design and it's obviously Anakin's design, and you're like, wait, they just destroyed that lightsaber.
I
And
didn't
like,
even notice that.
and his hair is different. Like,
Well, his hair was cut. No, see, I thought that's because
it was like a symbol of like him coming back.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
and like first viewing, you definitely think that, but then like second time around, where you know it's like not him, you realize like, oh, like that's different, and like the lightsaber is there, and like there was like a weird thing with like 3PO. There was a moment with 3PO where they don't go into it, but I feel like 3PO might have been able to detect that Luke wasn't really there. Because Luke is using the Force to basically put into people's minds that he's there. How can he do that to a droid, you know? I feel like maybe...
He is a pretty weak-minded droid.
But then, like, Luke winks to 3PO, and I was like...
Oh, okay.
I was like, something's going on. And then, like...
Huh.
And like even when they shoot him down and he's still alive, like first viewing you think like he used like a force or something and whatever, but then you realize like, oh, he's just like a hologram, sort of like a force hologram. And then like that moment at the end, like this entire movie was about messing with people using the force. Like the whole like, we didn't even really talk about like what it did for their characters, but like Kylo and Rey, when they're talking to each other like through the force, was so cool, and like where they're connecting to each other, and you don't really know why it's happening. You think it's like there's a purpose and stuff, but then it's just...
Well, I thought there was some sort of connection that they had together. But,
yes,
I mean, there is a little bit of a connection because she is the last sort of adult Jedi that has a little bit of training.
Yeah,
and he's the last Sith. I mean, except for Snoke, but
now he's dead.
But yeah, to find out that Snoke was actually behind their
all
connection,
of that was like, and he like messed with them, and that was so cool. And then like Luke using the Force to make Kylo think he was there was so cool. And like, and then you go back to the island where Luke is like concentrating. You can see like the amount of like pressure it's putting on him, because it's like, even when Rey was there, he wasn't really even using the Force because he had sort of cut himself off. So it's like the first time he's been using the Force in who knows how long, and like he like it's killing him.
It drains him basically.
Yeah, and like at the end, like where he sort of has the satisfaction of like knowing that he fooled Kylo and sort of like lets go, and that shot is so good of him looking. And it's the two sons. And it's sort of the wrap up of like him looking at the two sons in A New Hope, where he's longing for adventure and glory and all of that stuff. And he's at the end of his journey, he's looking at the two sons, looking back at everything he's done. Yeah. And it was just so, it's like, it was so good.
He's no longer looking to the future, the horizon, adventure.
Because they do it on purpose, where like in A New Hope, he's looking this way. And when you read text or anything, you look to the right. Like when you want to look to the future, you sort of look for cinematography and filmmaking. You look to the right,
okay.
And then for this one, he looks to the left, sort of symbolizing like looking back on things.
Yeah,
you know?
and
so good.
Not and no longer needing to. Adventure and
excitement. Jedi crave not these things.
Yeah, and just being like kind of at peace.
Yeah,
with everything.
And she says like there was no anger or fear or anything. It was like he was peace.
It was peace and purpose.
Yes. Yeah. God, that was so cool. And yeah, I feel like they really there's a satisfaction to how Luke's story wraps up in this. More than Han's, I would say. Like Han dies, and it's sad because Han is no longer in Star Wars, but like as Han never really had like a full like character arc or anything. He's just like a smug guy.
I disagree. I think when Han in A New Hope, Han is a smuggler.
Oh yeah, that's true.
And then he slowly becomes like
an important force in the rebellion.
And not only an important force, but he becomes committed to the rebellion. And he becomes instead of he's almost like that character
Finn?
No.
No.
The
Laura
guy,
Dern.
No, the guy that's
Benicio del Toro.
yes.
Okay.
He's a character that only cares about himself. He's
Yes.
not concerned with good or bad or right or wrong. He's just, I'm here with my buddy Chewie, and we're trying to make money, and whatever. Where he becomes a person that actually cares.
Yeah, that's fair.
And has feelings for other people.
Yeah.
So yeah, he definitely has an arc, but also the fact that the reason Han doesn't really have that type of thing is because Harrison Ford wanted Han to die
Immediately.
in the first movie. You know what I mean? He was
He's never
when
wanted
they
to fight.
finally killed Han, he was like, finally.
Yes.
I've been waiting my whole life for this moment.
Yeah, and overall, I really love what they did with this movie, within the movie itself, and sort of what they do with the lore of Star Wars, and sort of pushing what can be done with the Force and stuff, just Luke pretending that he's there, and Snoke sort of connecting the bond between Rey and Kylo and stuff, seeing more of what the Force can do, and with other little things, I know that another question that I heard was why didn't the Resistance is escaping only because they're a little faster than the First Order? Couldn't they have light speeded over there really quick and been in front of them? But for me, that was a complaint of someone. But for me, I don't
think they were any faster. I think
they were a little faster because they were always out of the range of their weapons.
I thought they were going at the same speed basically.
Yeah,
but
for me, hear my perspective of this. Where
is it possible to light speed 30 feet? That's the thing.
Because
a ship that size to just go to light speed
before Laura Dern did it,
whatever little ground they needed to cover to get on top of them. I don't know.
And before Laura Dern had done it, no one thought of trying to lightspeed through things. That's
it's a suicide mission.
Yeah, exactly. And so for and for them, I think when that moment happened and people are questioning it, I think back to A New Hope, where the rebel fighters are here and they're down in the trenches, we should evacuate. It's in our time of victory, we don't need to worry about this. We can relax. Come on, guys, and for me, the whole slow chase scene between them throughout the entire movie was just we don't need to exhaust any more than we need to. It's a waiting game at this point. We're totally in the victory. We just gotta wait for them, and then we'll fucking
eventually they're gonna run out of fuel.
Yeah, so that
but still, I just don't know the physics behind doing such a short jump.
Yeah.
When she was doing her jump to cut through the Snoke ship,
yeah,
she could have set her point for whatever, infinity out in space, but to do a jump that's only
a little past them.
With a ship of that size, when you come out of light speed, you kind of come to a sudden stop, but to do a jump that short
it's
seems
who knows,
logistically hard. I don't know.
It's a movie about moving rocks and laser swords
and traveling at light speed, which
it's
physically impossible. But it's also it was also impossible to track through light speed, and they somehow did it.
Oh, so I found on Twitter someone DM'd me a picture of in Rogue One. At the end of Rogue One, where they're looking through all of the files to try to find the Death Star plan, she's looking at all of these projects, and one of them is hyperlight tracking.
Oh wow!
There's an Easter egg for it, before the movie even came out.
That's funny.
Which is okay, so, Rogue One is still not great, but that's cool.
That's what was funny when we were watching that. How Star Wars was saved by the edit.
Yeah.
Remember one of the edit things?
Watch that video, by the way. It's really good.
Yeah, how Star Wars was saved by the edit. It's about how A New Hope at the time
was a disaster.
It was just called Star Wars. But yeah, it was a complete disaster before the final edit. It's a really cool video on YouTube. But how when Lucas goes back in and tries to ruin his films. Which it's a piece of art, and
it's up to the creator to.
It not only I'm saying it's a piece of art, and it represents this period in time, and to go back 20 years later and make changes to that piece of art and release it as the same thing is bullshit.
Yeah.
Like the example that I've heard used is, what if the Beatles went back and went back and re-edited Sgt. Pepper's and then didn't allow the original to be released. Released or whatever. But in that edit of A New Hope, when Obi-Wan is shutting down the tractor beam, there's writing on there that says like tractor beam, blah 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 blah. Yeah. And in the edit, he used some fake Star Wars language there instead. So it's just like these symbols. It makes it even more confusing. I love it.
But I think at the end of the day, I think it's about time for us to wrap up. We're going a little long, but it's we had a lot to say about this movie, and like the more we talk about it, the more I think about it, the more I like this movie. So I think like the last thing we could really talk about is like we ranked Force Awakens when we reviewed Force Awakens for my older YouTube channel. So let's re-rank the movies again. So I think I can go first, so I can give you some time, because I'm throwing this at you like immediately, so you might need a minute. So I think for me it goes Empire, Return of the Jedi, The Last Jedi, A New Hope, Force Awakens, Rogue One. I know how important A New Hope is, and I appreciate it, but I think those other movies do things more interesting for me, at least, So Force Awakens, Rogue One, 3, 2, 1.
Okay. So I haven't changed. I'm still, Empire's the best.
Yes.
A New Hope is number 2.
Yeah.
Return of the Jedi is 3.
Last Jedi is
4.
Okay.
Force Awakens 5, and then 3, 2, 1.
Yeah.
And Rogue One I don't consider. The thing I'll say about A New Hope, and even compared to like this Star Wars movie or any other Star Wars movie, the reason A New Hope it's super important, and what makes Star Wars so important is that, okay, all these movies that come out now, like all those previews we saw, all the CGI and whatever, all the special effects,
all started there.
All started with A New Hope.
Yeah.
And see, that's what makes Star Wars is no longer a different kind of movie, because every single movie has all this technology and all this stuff that did not exist in 1977 when A New Hope came out. And A New Hope was huge. And if A New Hope had failed,
we might not have.
There would have never been any of these movies. And now maybe eventually
we'd get to the technology.
Technology would happen.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't have happened when it happened. And Star Wars would have never. This movie wouldn't have been made.
No, exactly. And I understand the importance of Star Wars without a doubt.
I was 3. Or
no, you're 2.
I was 2.
Yeah.
And I was taken to that movie 7 times in the theater at the age of 2, and then
because your dad really liked it.
Yeah, because my dad really liked it too. And then I remember first seeing it when I was like 5. Like
you're cognizant
before, like on TV before the Empire Strikes Back came out. Mm-hmm. It'll always have super valuable meaning to me.
Yes.
Without A New Hope, none of this technology exists, and it eventually would have happened.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't have been Star Wars, and Star Wars was a completely new type of movie.
Yeah.
When it came out, A New Hope, that is. So that's why.
I totally understand.
And that's why you can't say that Return of the Jedi is better than A New Hope either. It's not right.
Well, everybody, thank you so much for sticking with us for this long. Again, sorry that the audio quality is a little lower. I'm doing an on-the-go mic. Video quality, we're obviously somewhere else. I'm in Cleveland, and I waited to see The Last Jedi with my dad. And sort of before, I was like, we reviewed Force Awakens. We should review Last Jedi together as well. So sorry for sort of quality of like audio and video being a little down, but I think we had a really good talk. And
Yeah, we got this sweet poster.
Yeah, Yoda. Unlearned. So, for people who might have kept on with spoilers, who still have not seen The Last Jedi, you're crazy. You should have seen it before you went in here. But also, like, I think the best way to describe this movie for people going into it is unlearned what you have learned.
Yeah.
Nice. But yeah, we both really love it, and like the more I talk about it and the more I see it, the more I really, really like it.
Yeah,
so.
I'm looking forward to seeing it again.
Yeah,
today.
We're seeing it for the third time in a couple hours at this point. So, but again, thank you guys so much for joining us. Again, this has been Zero Life, a sometimes weekly podcast talk show where we talk about nerd culture and pop culture and all the stuff that we love about it. Again, when we can post, we've been really busy and really bad. This is our first video in December. I'm sorry about that. Our full-time jobs our day jobs got really busy, so doing the side stuff had to take the backseat for a little bit. But we post every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time right here on youtube.com/ZeroLife and every podcast service around the globe and on the internet and all that good stuff. Dad, where can people find you on the internet?
Hopefully nowhere.
Exactly.
So, I'm signing off. I'll see you for episode 9.
Yeah, exactly. In another 2 years. And if you want to follow me, I'm at Sadboy Barrett on the internet, on Twitter, on Instagram, and all that good stuff. If you want to DM me and be like, I hate you, Last Jedi was bad, and I can just respond like, that's just an opinion, man. But thank you guys so much for joining us. For those who might have been wondering my thoughts on the movie and whatnot, I hope I elaborated why I really enjoyed it, and hopefully I turned you on some opinions of the movie and whatnot. But again, thank you guys so much for joining us, and until next time, stay nerdy.